You're listening to the Uptime Wind Energy Podcast, brought to you by BuildTurbines.com. Learn, train, and be a part of the clean energy revolution. Visit BuildTurbines.com today. Now here's your hosts, Alan Hall, Joel Saxum, Phil Totaro, and Rosemary Barnes.
Well, to start off the week, Joel and I have just completed a couple of days at ACP OMS in Nashville, Tennessee. And if you don't know where Nashville is, it's kind of in the center-ish of the country, more towards the eastern part than the western part. It's the same state where Davy Crockett came from, Daniel Boone. Am I right about that, Joel? Sergeant York, Andrew Jackson.
Yeah, those are some old names.
Yeah, it's right next to North Carolina, right? So we're like I don't know, an hour's drive from North Carolina, with the area that got hit with the hurricane a couple of months ago. We're not very far from it, but Nashville, the event was pretty well populated. I was trying to relate it to the OMS event that happened in San Diego a year ago. It felt like it was a little bit smaller of an event, Joel, and maybe the attendance was a little bit lower.
Yeah, we were at the Gaylord Opryland Convention Center. It's absolutely massive. I learned today that it's the largest resort convention center without a casino in the entire world. Like, it felt like you walked like a mile through the inside of the thing to get to it, like the conference center. But what I think the issue there was, or what it felt like, is it didn't feel like it was as well attended as it was last year. A lot of ISPs, so a lot of blade repair companies, a lot of service companies, all floating around. Not as many operators. But my thought is we're used to having this thing in San Diego. It was 40 degrees and raining today. And in San Diego, every year, it's like 75, 80 degrees, beautiful. Everything is fantastic. People bring their families and stuff like that. So you hear a lot of people, oh, yeah, I can't grab dinner tonight. I got, my wife and kids, we're going to go do this when we're in the San Diego event. Here, not so much, because there's live music. That's great. But you're also 20 minutes from downtown. It's a little bit of a different feel. But yeah, the show floor, of course, Alan and you and I took a couple laps around it, and Claire, our producer, as well. We took a couple laps around to see what was there. A lot of the same players that we're used to seeing, a lot of the same companies. Nothing super new that stuck out, nothing groundbreaking. However, couple cool things, right? We sat down. I think we recorded a bunch of great material with some of our podcast friends and people new to the podcast at the thing. So you'll hear those in the coming weeks, of course. But we did get to look at the ArthNex platform from Arthwind. That was really cool. Also, the Gulf Wind Technology team was there, and they were showcasing their up tower root bushing repair. That was really cool. Other than that, CNC onsite, right? Ability to do precision machining up tower, which is really neat. But other than that, yeah, kind of lackluster for new technology or really cool new stuff. I don't know what you thought about that, Alan.
I didn't see much new there. MotorDoc brought some new stuff in terms of software to analyze wind turbines, and that's always cool. I love when Howard Penrose brings new technology to the market, and he's so gung-ho about it. And as an electrical engineer, I just find his approach to solving problems interesting. Arone's has some cool stuff. Obviously, they always bring the robots, and they have a new rover internal drone inspection robot that has an enhanced lighting for some of these offshore blades. And obviously, they're doing a lot of work with GE Vernova at the minute. Yeah, but the operators part of it was really non-existent. GE Vernova had a really small booth. Vestas also had a booth, right, Joel?
Vestas had the same, so you can see the scale. Vestas had the same size booth we did.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. I would say a lot of ISPs there. We talked to a ton of blade repair companies, a lot of people providing services to the industry, which is normally what's at this event, right? But it seemed to be lacking in the operator, the asset owners, the actual purchasers of services and products. Almost like a pendulum swung, and all the operators started to figure out that this is really the event to go to. So there was a ton of them here, but there happened to be less operators. So, I did hear some some really good conversations around the booth, business getting done, everybody getting prepared for the upcoming blade repair seasons, of course. We talked to a couple of ISPs that say this has been their busiest winter that they've ever had, which is kind of interesting in the States here, that people are starting to kick off a bit earlier in the year to try to get more done. I don't know if that's a budget crunch problem, or we've just gotten to the point where people are looking for capacity, right? If you're looking for blade repair teams, that's the conversation we kept hearing. How many teams do you have? I've got 15. Well, 10 of them are spoken for, right? If you want to be a part of the other 5, you better act soon.
Yeah, I would say in general, though, don't you think that the spend was less this year for booths? And you didn't see the big flashy booths. ACP probably had the largest booth this year, and the most show type things happening. Of course, they have a couple of speakers that come, and all that generally goes on. But you didn't see a lot at the booths themselves. There were a couple of rather interesting parties that happened. I mean, we should talk about the town for a minute. The last time I was in Nashville was probably 15 years ago. So the NFL team was here, and the Tennessee Titans were here, and Broadway was always there with live music in the bars. You could always walk along that. But the number of people that are here now is so much more. It's crazy. The airport is probably the nicest airport in the United States, and it competes with Copenhagen's airport. Couldn't believe it, right? We saw Lewis Hamilton's Formula One car at the conference center. Like, you don't see those things in America. That doesn't happen. So what the activity in Nashville, economic activity, is off the charts. It is so much different than I remember it, and I guess that's good for Nashville. People are tending to move to the southeast of the United States at the minute. So my guess is a lot of my fellow compatriots from Massachusetts and New York that are moving down this way based on the license plates that I saw. And that's good. I mean, obviously you want to go to a city that is vibrant for sort of these trade shows, but I'm not sure early March is the right time to be in Nashville. April would feel like the right kind of weather. And where are we going next year, Joel? Where's ACP OMS?
So ACP OMS, this same conference will be in Orlando next year. In Orlando, of course, very fun. So when I said that to someone, our friend Armando from Arfland, he said, "Ooh, I'll bring my wife and kids. We'll go to Disneyland and do Universal Studios and all that." So I think that one could pique some more interest for some travelers.
Yeah, it's a lot closer if you're coming from Europe too. You can usually direct flight right to Orlando, which makes life easier. Yeah, that's good. But I still think San Diego is everybody's number one.
For sure. Yeah, the next show, if you're wondering where you might be able to catch Alan, myself, or anybody else, we'll be in Phoenix for ACP up there in late May.
As wind energy professionals, staying informed is crucial, and let's face it, difficult. That's why the Uptime Podcast recommends PES Wind Magazine. PES Wind offers a diverse range of in-depth articles and expert insights that dive into the most pressing issues facing our energy future. Whether you're an industry veteran or new to wind, PES Wind has the high-quality content you need. Don't miss out. Visit peswind.com today. So most wind turbines at Ameren's High Prairie Wind Farm in Missouri remain offline. And if you remember, they had 3 turbines collapse last year due to some blade failures. Now, according to Ameren's Director of Renewable Operations, only about 15 of the turbines have been reactivated while the company continues to perform inspections to identify which units require blade replacement. And when I saw blade replacement, I thought, oh, Rosemary. We need to understand why they are going to be replacing blades, because usually they would try to repair them. Now, Joel and I did a little bit of investigation because it's been a while since I've followed this story, but there's about 160 V120s at this site. 163. There you go. 163 V120s at this site, and a handful of V112s. And it looks like probably the V112s are operating right now. It's the larger quantity of V120s. This is not a great look for wind at the moment, especially with the political activity that is happening. when you have a wind farm that's shut off and you don't have corrective action after all these months, something really serious is playing out. What I want to get from the group here is, one, what is the likely cause where they wouldn't be able to turn at least some of the wind turbines on? And second, how do we resolve this quickly? What needs to be done? Do we need to just replace the blades, kind of like they're doing at Vineyard Wind at the moment? Or is this a deeper issue?
Let's start with why everything's turned off. That's Ameren's decision to be prudent, presumably, and not some kind of regulatory requirement by some state or county officials. Although you could run into that kind of a scenario if you have repeated damage issues, which frankly we were all kind of expecting to come out of the lightning strike on Vineyard Wind this past week, and we're still awaiting some kind of word on that. But for them to be losing that kind of revenue, that has to be offset by their perception of the risk that would be associated with having yet another turbine collapse, potentially if there's some kind of serial issue with the blades or something else. And unfortunately, we just don't have enough detail on what actually happened there, whether it was lightning strikes that were causing the issues or whether it was a manufacturing defect. We don't know. But yeah, I mean, for them to shut off like most of the turbines in their wind farm, that's a huge financial loss for them. That is a decision they would have to make based on, not wanting to undertake the risk of continuing to operate and have a fourth or a fifth or a sixth turbine collapse this year.
So right now, then operationally, they've got to be doing inspections. They've got to be putting people in blades, crawlers, external drones. Like there's got to be something that they're pinpointing on, right? Is it a structural issue? Is it a lightning issue? Something that they've got to be out investigating. And this is what I would expect. Either an inspection and or a CMS solution for whatever the problem is. But I would expect to see them cascading back online. Like, hey, we've done inspection on turbine 7 and it seemed clear. Let's turn it on. Turbine 8, let's turn it on.
It's cleared. And
yeah, but we haven't seen that yet.
I've got an article here that says that they are bringing them back online. It's an article on ktvo.com. Don't know about the quality of that one. But it's quoting David Miners, Ameren's Director of Renewable Operations, that we had some turbines where the blades came off and the imbalance caused the turbines to fall. So it sounds like, it's a root insert problem or, something related to the attachment. Based on his language, doesn't sound like the blades were snapping or that they were getting struck by lightning and falling off. And then it also says that they have started up wind turbines that they know are unaffected, and they have about 15 wind turbines across the site running right now, and we'll add to those. So it's been months, right, since it was initially shut down. Looks like they are going pretty slow, but does sound like in their root cause analysis they have managed to narrow it down to perhaps it's like one manufacturing location that is associated with the problem, and so they're confident about some other ones, or it's possible that they did do some they were able to do some kind of testing. They were very cautious at first, and to be honest, it's quite a slow process to get them restarted. From my perspective, it could be because it was hard to pinpoint. It could be because they were getting terrible customer service from their OEM. Both things are possible.
Yeah, I'm thinking in my mind right now the cost implications of it, like you were saying, Phil. So terrible service from the OEM, depending on if they're under an FSA or not. At some stage, you might be able to get some insurance coverage for the business interruption, but because basically it takes an incident, right? So there has to be some kind of property damage to trigger an insurance case. You had that, but that was per turbine, and if you're turning ones off that technically don't have any issues with them, do they have to cover that? I don't know. I don't know what their contract looks like.
And even if they've got a full service agreement, they're not usually uncapped, right? It's not like you can just get infinite damages off them, there's usually a floor to availability and that they have to pay for, and then beyond that, there's actually no incentive for them to do anything for the rest of the the year of the contract. So sometimes those like the comfort that you feel from those kinds of agreements actually is not that comforting when you come to have an issue.
Well, I haven't thought of it that way. Well, uh, Phil mentioned it, so I'll continue the discussion here about the lightning strike that did happen, or appears to have happened, at Vineyard Wind on February 27th. And we had just finished our last podcast episode talking about CMS and where that can be implemented very cost efficiently, which clearly is for lightning strikes. And I was on the airplane to Nashville when the news reports started coming out that there had been a lightning strike to the blade that had been broken, which was, I believe, turbine AW38 out there at Vineyard Wind, and that broken blade got struck and then it caught fire for some length of time. At least that's what the report said. But I was watching live stream from my airplane, the helicopter search, basically going to look at all the turbines in Vineyard Wind. My guess is looking for additional lightning strike damage or debris. There was a couple of boats out there also, vessels that were looking for debris in the water. And I was slacking everybody on the airplane again. We live in the 21st century, so these things happen. I was literally watching a helicopter fly over Vineyard Wind while I was flying at 35,000 feet. And the thing that ran through my head was, how do they not know where lightning struck on that wind farm? And I think the answer is because they don't have each of the turbines instrumented with a $250 sensor. So they probably spent 20 grand in fuel and helicopter time checking all the blades with a helicopter, which just didn't make any sense to me at all. And it just that, I would still had my ire built up about we should be putting CMS systems on for lightning strike. And then that happened. Like, it's like the perfect test case for putting on simple sensors. So has it been 1 year in quote unquote service, Joel, since those turbines have really been in the water?
Not even. And we know that, of course, most offshore turbines are designed by engineering teams that are sitting in Denmark, where they have or Germany, that have a specific type of lightning, and not very much of it, to be honest with you, in the North Sea. And when they come over to that northeast coast of the U.S., they are going to get pounded. It's going to happen.
So I know a guy that can hook GE/Vineyard Wind up with how many turbines are out there, 25, 30 turbines that are out there with sensors for a couple of grand that would fix this problem. Yeah, it's time to move on, everybody. Let's go. Don't let blade damage catch you off guard. Eelogic's ping sensors detect issues before they become expensive, time-consuming problems. From ice buildup and lightning strikes to pitch misalignment and internal blade cracks, Eelogic's ping has you covered. Their cutting-edge sensors are easy to install, giving you the power to stop damage before it's too late. Visit eelogix-ping.com and take control of your turbine's health today. GE Vernova and Amazon Web Services have formed a strategic partnership to develop onshore wind projects that will support AWS's expanding data center operations. Now, the collaboration aims to help Amazon secure reliable, cost-effective, and sustainable electricity. It sounds like Rosemary wrote this press release for all of its growing computing capabilities while addressing global energy demands. Now, not very long ago, remember when GE Vernova had a big release about the number of gas turbines that they were going to sell? I think it was like 20 gigawatts per year was the number they were talking about, mostly for data centers. But it looks like Amazon Web Services has decided to use wind turbines instead of gas turbines. That's pretty good.
Yes, and it's interesting too because, some of those gas turbines are going to be for behind the meter, um, data centers and things like that. And the point is they continue to expand as data centers continue to expand. Amazon's going to be one of the leaders in that. And the fact that they also want to be able to leverage renewables, it's not just a PR thing for them. They actually understand that even though renewables may be variable, they can leverage that based on the way they've structured the data center to be able to do a lot of the processing when there's wind or solar that they can offtake, and because of the natural balance between solar, which obviously happens during the day, and a lot of wind, which in most places in the world is stronger at night than it is during the day. You get enough of a base load out of renewables that you can actually run a data center almost entirely off renewables and minimize the amount of gas that you would necessarily have to use. So good on them for being proactive in finding ways to leverage this.
Should we have the discussion that we're dealing with right now, Joel? Operators taking what the OEM delivers and just swallowing it whole hog and saying, well, whatever's on there, whatever the OEM has done is good enough, and we're going to fly it without doing their homework first. That happened to us today. Man, is that frustrating.
It's such a frustrating thing because, we talked about this at the Australia O&M event. Honestly, it was a comment made up on stage. It's really frustrating when Alan and I are dealing with engineers left and right, performance people, engineers, asset managers in the field, and the technician, site supervisors, the people that are actually dealing with the technology. And in many organizations, they either aren't asked for their feedback, aren't allowed to give it, or aren't even invited to the table with the development side of the corporation that is talking with the OEMs and buying the kit, right? So it'd be like if I'm driving a Ford truck trying to pull a trailer every day, but my trailer hitch sucks, and I know it, and it bothers me every day in the field, and the person buying the trucks doesn't ask me, or I'm not allowed to talk to them, and then they buy me another truck and send me that one again, the trailer hitch doesn't work again. Well, that's not smart. And that's what's happening. We see that in our wind industry is the feedback from the engineers. And after you've been dealing with this asset for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, some of these things are the same 6, 7-year-old turbines that they're buying again and not asking the OEM or putting in the RFP, hey, can you fix this? Can you upgrade this? This is a big problem for us. What can you do for us here? That conversation just seems to be lagging so bad in the wind industry that there's like this, the circular feedback mechanism isn't there.
Well, the OEMs deliver blades, in particular, and turbines at a larger scale to the operators, and the operators don't even know what they're getting when they arrive on site. That is wrong. I don't know how to even frame that into a logical discussion that makes sense to me if I'm buying turbines and the OEM just says, plunk, here it is. Oh yeah, we did X, Y, Z to these things, which you have no knowledge of. The engineers are just finding out, and when they get on site, it's a completely different model. And now you got to go unwind, spool up engineering, figure out what's going on, realize, do I have a problem here or not? What do I need to plan for that was different than the last time they delivered blades to me or turbines to me? That can't happen. It can't happen. Someone's got to push back and say, we're not playing this game anymore. This is over.
Yeah, there's two things with this as well. One is the procurement people aren't getting that feedback either, because the people involved in procurement are just disconnected, and it's ultimately their responsibility to, if you're spending whatever $7-8 million per turbine, like, hey, why don't we make sure that we're getting a high quality product here? So that's part of it. And that's where I really see the failure and the fall down is the procurement people are the ones that need that type of feedback and information. Yeah, the developers, yeah. But if the developer is an entirely separate organization and you're buying a project, you're typically, especially if you're a financially focused investor, you're buying a project and you're expecting either the OEM or whoever is the operator to just manage the thing for you. You're buying that as it's almost like a piece of art on the wall or something. You're buying it as an investment. You're not necessarily going to be involved in the day-to-day upkeep, which basically means that there's already that level of separation between the people who build projects specifically for the purpose of selling them off to somebody else, and they don't have a vested interest in, as long as they can see a return on that transaction, they don't have to worry about whether or not the OEM is fulfilling their obligations under a full wrap service contract. It's not their problem anymore.
One of the things we have here on this fantastic panel is someone who's lived this life and has been a part of this value chain, Rosemary. So you were, at a blade company responsible for a specific component, a specific system within the blades. Did you ever get like an email that says, hey, this wind farm here has this issue. Are we going to fix this on the next model, or how are we going to work within this? Or did you ever see that feedback, or what was that feedback mechanism for you when you were at LM?
I mean, yes, I did. I don't know if I had the most typical thing so I was leading the blade heating, the blade de-icing team, and it's quite a small niche product that isn't widely available, but widely used or needed. But for the sites that need it, they like desperately need it. I was the engineer leading that team, and my electrical engineer as well. We both were qualified to climb towers, and we would go onto site and make sure that they were being installed properly, and then we'd go and look at them after a little while to see that they were doing what we expected them to do. And then when there were problems, one of us would probably go out there too. And so it was actually quite a high level. But I will say I was the first engineer at LM that was qualified to climb towers, to actually go inside and look inside the blades. And it was quite a fight at first to make them realize that I couldn't just design something and, work on it in the factory.
So, Rosemary, let me ask you this question then. You're talking about a niche problem that operators have some issues with. Alan and I are talking about the largest problem, and it has been noted by insurance OEM operators, which is lightning. And we're seeing garbage systems come out of the OEMs that they're just continuing to have lightning problems, but nobody's seems to be fixing them. Like, we've talked to some people in the background at some different places, and they're like, is lightning that bad of an issue? I'm like, are you that disconnected from the field that you don't know this? Like, these numbers are staggering.
That's something I got some experience on. My last de-icing system that I led before I left was a conductive system. So it was carbon fiber, and we had resisted doing that system the whole time because of its effect on lightning, but we really couldn't avoid it in the end. It is just far superior in terms of ice melting performance. But I will say that project was 75% a lightning protection project and 25% a blade heating project. Certainly, the lightning team is incredibly, or were, it's been 5 years since I was there, so I can't say what they're like now, but we're very passionate about making sure that lightning systems were improved. Everybody was aware that there is a huge gulf between being able to design a system that can pass certification, very easy to do, versus a system that is going to survive in the wild, much harder. So whilst I agree that we have not come up with satisfactory lightning protection systems, I wouldn't say no one's doing anything about it. It's an incredibly hard problem that people are working on and not yet succeeding at, is what I would say.
I will grant you that. But then here's a big but here. If you're going to put something on a wind turbine, it better live there for 20 years. And you better have data to show it's going to live there for 20 years. This sort of, hey, let's just temporarily fix this so I get out of the warranty period, and then the operator has to deal with the remnants of the system for the next 18 years or 8 years in the U.S., that is not good customer support or service. It just isn't.
No, I mean, that's not the goal. And two, if it's a serial issue, then it's not a get out of jail free card. Like, the OEM is still going to be on the hook for it if it's a serial issue. What I will say is that you don't know how it's going to perform after 20 years until you've got, thousands of turbines out there that have been out there for a number of years, testing one prototype turbine, like doing a bunch of simulations, tests in the lightning lab, doing one prototype turbine. That is not remotely close enough to telling you if you're going to have problems on a whole, in like all these different lightning environments with a little bit of damage, all of those sorts of things. So, and I think that the lightning protection problem was much easier 10 years ago, right? Like, the a bit shorter all glass blades were protected satisfactorily, I believe, right? In general. And then the designs changed, lightning problem got harder. They knew that and knew that they had to make new lightning protection systems, and they did. And, did plenty of simulations and, the required testing and prototypes, which, like everybody knows that doesn't do much. And then they got out in the field and they see failures, and now they have to fix them. It takes there's a lag exacerbated by the fact that it was just such a fast push from 2015 onwards. It's just been accelerated pace of technology development.
I just want to interject here because I think, Rosemary, you touched on a pain point with me. So when OEMs run into trouble, that they've experienced problems in the field, and they feel like they don't have the expertise in-house, and lightning is one of those areas where that happens quite frequently, where do they go? Generally speaking, they run to academia. People who have never been around a wind turbine in service, have not had that experience, have not done any sort of lightning protection in another field that's complicated like aerospace. And what they end up doing is they get the most PhD qualified but real world novice person to come in and provide them guidance, which is the opposite. And this is my struggle with you too, Rosemary. He's like, here's Rosemary, this blade expert, knows a ton, has real world experience, has actually climbed a turbine or two. And when the rubber hits the road and someone runs into trouble, where do they go? They go running back to the academia to give them the answer, instead of talking to the people who are out on the front lines who could give them better solutions, faster solutions, more cost-effective solutions today. And that is a corporate environment which is making huge mistakes. And I would rather see wind turbines be successful, particularly in today's environment, political environment in particular, where we have to be better. And I've met so many people in Nashville this week that want things to be better, that have the expertise and could fix the problems and could make the industry much more vibrant than it is. They're left on the sidelines. God knows why. It is just a real struggle with me, and I think everybody on this podcast that we've had on kind of fits into that mold. They really do.
And let me just add that this is the conversation we're having about blades and lightning and stuff right now is the same conversation that was actually being had about 18 or so years ago about gearboxes. And it's the squeaky wheel kind of issue. So the same thing that Joel said before about the pain points that everybody has, and the same thing that Alan said before about, not leveraging the right people. That was the same, they didn't understand what white etching cracks were, back then. They didn't understand, all these things because they didn't have the right kind of people, addressing the issue.
And they ran to academia and they slowed it down.
Yeah. But we got to a point where gearboxes are closer to a 20-year design life than they ever have been before. That had to have a critical mass of complaints before it got fully addressed. And that's where we are with blades. It feels like in the industry at this point, there's a lot of people that are starting to get a lot more vocal about the pain points they've got and the issues that they're having. But it's going to be another 3 to 5 years before we really fix a lot of these issues. So we've just got to keep speaking up about it.
As Rosemary has pointed out, we're going to put a woman on Mars before we fix some of these blade issues, and that's insane.